The items you see here are everything needed to make a high quality, very detailed reproduction of a hybrid bridge or of a denture. This is the bridge we'll duplicate for this demonstration. It's most important that the metal interfaces are perfectly reproduced so that your bridge fits on its analog model accurately. This unique flask can accommodate any size of bridge or denture and can be used in a variety of applications. This removable fence is designed to easily create injection ports for the mold. The removable insert increases the working depth of the flask to accommodate very large pieces of work. The insert is made of a material that our silicone duplicating material will not adhere to. This is convenient so that we don't have to apply a separator to the insert before we pour our silicone duplicating material. There are a number of good quality silicone duplicating materials available. I prefer this one because it has a good working time, and yet it cures in about 10 minutes, and it doesn't require a pressure pot for a bubble-free mold. It's a pourable two-part material that's mixed at a ratio of 1:1. You can buy it in 1 kilogram containers and measure it yourself by weight or by volume. Or you can get it in smaller quantities where both the base and catalyst are pre-measured just for use in this flask. After the first half of your mold has been poured and cured, you must apply a mold release agent such as this. Alternately, a thin coat of Vaseline also works well. Before we can pour the first half of our silicone mold, we must attach our bridge or denture to the injection ports on the fence. I prefer to place the bridge in the flask with the occlusal surfaces facing downward. I use sticky wax to firmly attach the bridge to 2 of the ports on the fence, trying to keep it fairly parallel to the flask, level with the flask. Be generous with your eluting sticky wax. You don't want the bridge to fall off mid-process, and you'll be glad to have large, wide open injection ports when you go to pour your mold, not some little skinny hole. Now, what about the open screw holes in the cylinders? Well, it only becomes a problem if they fill up with silicone, and they will fill up with silicone. Therefore, we're going to block them out with wax. Now, on the one side, on the occlusal side, it doesn't matter too much how they get blocked out. But on the interface side, we want to be very careful to preserve all the detail of the interface that we can. So we only place our wax just inside the screw hole itself, and be careful not to get any on the actual interface. The accuracy of that interface is what, more than anything, will determine the accuracy of our final prosthesis, and particularly the occlusion. Now, with the screw holes carefully blocked out and the bridge attached to the fence, we're ready to reposition it in the flask. Here I'm using an 8-ounce disposable plastic cup. I'm also going to use pre-measured base and catalyst. While pouring them in together isn't required, it does give you a head start on getting them mixed. Hand mixing should take about 30 seconds. You should mix until both colors are homogeneous. Your total working time will be about 2 minutes. Pouring slowly and gently tipping the mold back and forth as you pour will help to avoid trapping air bubbles under the occlusal surfaces. Pouring from a height of about 8 to 10 inches will tend to disperse any air bubbles in the mix. It may not be necessary to fill up to the top of the pink insert. The goal here is to fill up and bury our bridge such that when we pour our top half, the top half doesn't flow into any undercuts created by the bottom half. It's particularly important that there are no voids left or created in the areas of the injection ports. At this point, I set a timer for 12 minutes, and I put the top half of the flask in place just to be sure that the sides of the insert are properly supported while the material cures. Now for the all-important step of applying a separator to the first half of the mold. Here I'm going to use this separator, the Zermac separator. I usually like to apply 1 coat and let it dry for a few minutes and then apply a 2nd coat. You can also use a thin coat of Vaseline. Don't overdo the Vaseline though. There's no need to be careful to put a separator on the area of the pink insert, as the silicone won't stick to it. It just takes a few minutes for the separator to dry sufficiently. Then secure the top part of the flask to the lower part of the flask. Again, I'm going to use pre-measured base and catalyst, filling slowly from a height of 8 to 10 inches. Be careful to only fill up until you see that the material touches the inner surface of the clear flask. Filling further until it engages these retention holes on the top of the clear flask only creates more of a problem later. In 12 minutes you can separate your mold. When you go to retrieve your mold, you may find that the halves are fairly stuck together. First of all, remove any flash that might have flashed around the pink insert, and then apply firm, constant pressure and go slowly, applying firm, constant pressure to separate the halves. The key here is to go slowly and keep your pressure firm and constant. They will separate. Retrieve your bridge and then remove any thin flash around the molds that may inhibit it from reseating in the flask accurately. Apply a surfactant to each half of the mold and then blow it dry before reassembling the flask. After blowing away any debris, reassemble all the parts in your flask, ensuring that they are each one seated into the flask. Now check that the injection ports are clear of any debris or flash. To pour my mold, I use a special flowable dye stone. It's not like other dye stones in that it's flowable. I vacuum mix it and then I transfer the material into a small flexi bowl, which will give me really good control as I carefully pour the material into just one of the injection ports. The other one is the exhaust port. You want to tip the mold slightly so that it fills up on the side and then at the bottom, and then you tip the mold up straight and watch for it to come up in the exhaust port on the other side. Then you know you're full. You can gently vibrate it as you do this to be sure that you get rid of any bubbles in the mix. A 15-minute set time is sufficient. If you have a pressure pot to put it in, it'll be even stronger if you put it in a pressure pot. The extreme level of accuracy in the reproduction is evident. This bridge will orient to the analog model perfectly. In the lab, this will be just like having the patient's prototype bridge, even though the patient never has to give it up. You've now given the lab all the information they need to produce a definitive prosthesis that you should be able to place with 0 adjustments. When employing the all-on-4 protocol, this method of duplicating a prototype bridge is efficient, cost-effective, and extremely accurate.